And joining us here in the studio to talk more about Puerto Rico's referendum vote is Luis Fortuno. He's a former governor of Puerto Rico and currently a partner at Steptoe and Johnson. Welcome, Luis.
Thank you, Rachelle.
So what role did the debt and financial crisis, do you think, play in this referendum vote?
Well, the movement towards statehood has been long and actually a tendency that is clear in the last 20 years, I'll say. Having said that, however, when you have a financial situation like the one the island has right now, people tend to want to define their future as quickly as possible, so perhaps it helped a little bit.
So with this referendum supporting statehood, what would be the economic upsides and downsides of Puerto Rico becoming a U.S. state?
Well, in addition to having full political powers and representation in the U.S. Congress, which the territory lacks today, it would certainly most likely bring investment, because a lot of people will find out that indeed Puerto Rico is and has been part of the U.S. for 120 years. A lot of people don't know that. Secondly, there are a number of programs that have to do not just with education, but infrastructure and so on, and healthcare, where Puerto Rico will participate fully, as opposed to the way it participates today. Territories don't get the same level of funding that the states do get.
Now, even though that statehood got the most votes, it was less people voted for it this time than in 2012. What do you think is happening here?
Well, in 2012, it coincided with the general election. So a lot more people went to vote that day. They were electing the governor, the state legislature, their non-voting representative in Congress. So that's what happened. In that vote, a majority of voters rejected the present territorial status, and a majority of voters asked for statehood. So again, that's why I'm saying that there's a tendency. But if we look back at history and how the 37 territories that became states of the Union, how they did it, oftentimes they had a number of votes until Congress took this up. And it only requires a simple majority in the House and the Senate for this to happen.
So certainly part of the course. It's not as if Puerto Rico...
It's part of a process. It's a long process, and this, I would say, it's part of a process.
Now, are you concerned at all that the fact that there was such low voter turnout, though, in this election could affect the strength of their case when they take it to Congress?
So that's exactly what the supporters of the territorial status wanted to see happen. And they partially boycotted the 2012 vote, although it really didn't work out as they expected. But they boycotted this one, and they were more successful this time because it did not coincide with the general election. So that even though they got on the ballot what they asked for, they still boycotted it. Again, if there's no change, they gain, and that's awful. You know, you want people to decide and determine their future.
But it's interesting. So if you're in the middle of a financial crisis as a territory, what would be the economic argument for wanting to stay a territory or perhaps voting for independence?
It's the worst of both worlds. On the one hand, you do not fully participate in the political decisions that are made in Washington. Secondly, you do not fully participate in many of the programs for which sometimes you contribute. Even on top of that, we contribute actually our sons and daughters to every single war we have had in the 20th century and the 21st century. And thirdly, there is a tremendous cloud over the island with people that don't know whether it's safe to invest or not, even though we have the U.S. federal courts and the rule of law. Normally, will apply in the same way that it would apply, in another city or state of the Union.
What do you think would make it clear for people so that they really had an idea of what the investment and the business landscape is in Puerto Rico?
Well, in the case of Hawaii, for example, once it became a state, that news actually flew all over the world, and that brought about tremendous new investment, especially in the tourism industry, but not just in the tourism industry. It's likely that the same thing would happen the day Puerto Rico becomes a state.
And just quickly, yes or no, likelihood of it getting through Congress this time?
Well, this time, very little is going through Congress at this moment. So I don't think they can even get a budget in place at this moment. So that has to do with what's the climate, the political climate in the city, more than anything else.
Certainly quite a few things on hold in Congress at the moment.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for your insights. Luis Fortuno, former governor of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.